Hello and welcome to the 2023 Revere TV coverage of the preliminary elections. My name is Ed DeVoe, and it's my pleasure and my honor to be sitting here with my two co-hosts. First of all, Kathy Reinstein, all the way to my left, Vice President in Government Relations of ROCA and former state representative. Kathy, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
It's great to have you here. And next to Kathy, we have Matthew Terrell. I'm his grandfather. He's not my grandson. I'm his grandfather. But more importantly, Matthew is the chairperson of the RHS Student Senate, who's been doing a lot of work this year with the election coverage, doing interviews and so forth. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on, and he'll tell you a little bit more about the other things that they've been doing within the Student Senate. But more importantly, the thing that we're here for tonight is to talk about this upcoming election and the preliminary that we're in right now, and to see who's going to move ahead to November. Kathy, you know, as you sit here tonight, it must be like deja vu all over again. It's been a long time since you've been, you know, on election night type of thing, and what's it like?
I have to say, it's much more of a relief to sit on this side of the table than be on the ballot. It's a nerve-wracking day. Everyone's worked really hard. I just need to say congratulations to everyone who is bold enough to put their name on a ballot, and all the people that have been working so hard to support them to get the people elected they believe in. This is not as easy as it seems, and it's nice to see such a diverse group and so many people picking up the gauntlet in Revere. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. So it's a very important night for a lot of people, and getting ready to move on, hopefully to November. We'll see where that goes. And Matthew, you're not experiencing deja vu. At least I don't think you are. This is your first time doing something like this. What are you thinking?
Oh, I'm really just taking it all in. Probably first couple minutes.
Yeah.
To think about it, but really want to also echo what Kathy said. I mean, I've run for election maybe in an electorate of 400 people. I cannot imagine what a whole city would feel like.
Yeah. Well, kudos to that, I'll tell you. So as we're sitting here, I think we want to take a look at the ballot. So maybe if we can get the ballot up on there, we can take a look at. And Kathy, why don't you start with the mail race?
Sure. As most of us know, we have 4 people that took on the challenge to be the next mayor of Revere. All former councilors, or currently councilors, I should say. We have Steve Morabito, who's a councilor at large. Pat Keefe, who right now is our acting mayor and formerly was the Ward 4 councilor. Jerry Visconti, who is a councilor at large, and Dan Rizzo, councilor at large and former mayor.
Yeah, you know, so and from all of that, what you see is that there are 4 people that were sitting on the city council that won't be sitting on the city council come January, which leaves it wide open, and particularly within the councilor at large race. Matthew, why don't you go down the list of people there?
Of course. First, we have Stephen DeMano Jr., Michelle Kelly, Alexander Olimi, Edward J. Almeida, Anthony Parziali, Anthony Zambuto, Juan Pablo Jaramillo, Robert J. Haas III, Mark Silvestri, Donald Martelli, and Wayne D. Rose.
Yeah. And in that, of course, 2 of those are incumbents, Tony Zambuto and Mark Silvestri, who will be running to be reelected at this point. Everybody else, for the most part, is a first-time candidate, with the exception of Juan Jaramillo, who's run for other offices before. But I think beyond him, I don't know if any of the other participants have run for office before.
Well, he hasn't run, but I mean, we have a very familiar name on this ballot too.
Oh yes.
In Bob Haas III.
Yes.
You know, his father, you know, served to the city honorably as the mayor. And you know, the Hasses are my neighbors, so I had to also like call that out too. But yeah, you know, it's nice to see, and it's again, that's not easy either, to take on your family's legacy. So again, to everybody, everyone's putting their name on the ballot, mostly new faces. And it's exciting. Yeah. It's really exciting.
It's interesting, and I know Bobby because I've worked with him at the senior center, and he's a great kid, and I'm really hoping, you know, that he Well, I'm not.
No, no.
Can't go there.
We
But at
cannot.
any rate, that being said, I will say that I'm always used to seeing Bobby in a plaid shirt. And when I saw his campaign statement, to see him in a suit and tie was kind of interesting. But yeah, so Bobby's got some pedigree, if you will, going from there. Moving on from there, we've got the ward council races. Ward 1, we have Joanne McKenna, who is the incumbent, and running opposed, and the candidates running in opposition, if you will, John Stamatopoulos and Brian Averbeck. So there are 2 people running for that seat. For the Ward 4 seat, we have Paul Argenzio, who's the director of the DPW, running for office now. Gregory Murray, one of the owners of Murray's on Broadway, and then Herbie Jean-Baptiste, who is also running. Greg and Herbie are both first-time candidates. I think Paul is the first-time candidate for office as well. And then in Ward 5, we have 4 candidates. One of which is incumbent John Powers. We also have Randall Modestin, Ralph Celestin, and Angela Guarino Sawaya. Those are all the ward races, and you may wonder, well, what about some of the other wards? And Kathy, you want to talk about those?
Sure. So we have in two of our wards, we have people running unopposed. One is in Ward 3, Anthony Cogliandro, who's running for re-election. He's unopposed. And in Ward 6, Chris Giannino, who's running for the first time, who served the city honorably on the Revere Police Department, is deciding that he's retiring and still wants to give back to the city. So he will be joining the council in January, representing Ward 6. So the other one is Ward 2. There's 2 people running for that seat. You have the incumbent Ira Novoselsky and challenger Danielle Osterman, and they will be on the ballot in November for Ward 2.
Yeah. And then looking at the school committee, they're not part of the preliminary. They will all be voted on, and those races will be decided in November. Matthew, you want to talk a little bit about some of the people running there?
Yes, we have 4 incumbents running: Stacy Bronsdon Rizzo, Jacqueline Monteroso, Aisha Mulberry Ellis, and John Kingston. And then for people who are not incumbents, we have Anthony L. Caggiano.
And I just want to add to that, because it was my bad on the notes there. Anthony Caggiano is the school committee representative for the vocational high school
Yes.
in Wakefield.
And then moving on, we have Fred Sinella, Anthony Matera, Ralph DeTico Jr., Vanessa G. Biasella, Riaz Garcia, and Catherine Schultz-Graham.
Yep. So those are all of the seats that are up there at this point, and we want to let you all know that, first off, this is a preliminary. Matthew, tell us the difference between preliminary and primary.
Yeah, so I had a lot of confusion with this, but apparently it is because there's not a difference in party affiliation. It's an open race. So a primary is when you have either, say, a Democratic race and a Republican race, but a preliminary is when there's just no party affiliation.
Okay. So, and the other thing to keep in note is that we'll be publishing numbers as they start to come into us. But again, our results are as best and as accurate as we can make them, but they are unofficial. And they won't be official until the election office says they're official.
Can we say too, thank you to Paul Fahey, the election commissioner, and everyone who works in the election commission and all of the poll workers. Thank you, and all of the police.
Yeah.
Who are manning the polls as well. Thank you for all that you do. I know that this can be a long day and sometimes be a stressful one. So
yeah, it's worthwhile, because you're right. It is a long day for all of them. I worked the polls for one election one time, and I got a real education in terms of what that is like. Yeah, so it is. And once again, and I echo the thanks there. And speaking of which, we will do a shout out to some of the people here at Revere TV and the crew that we have out at the polls. So right now we've got Mark Ferranti, who's going to be collecting all the numbers as they're coming in from people that we've got positioned at all the polls, some of which are people from Revere TV. I think Jessica's out there. Ali, I don't know if she's out there or she's working in the booth here. But we also have some RHS students from the Student Senate that are out working the polls. So we've got a number of people out there who will be getting the numbers, feeding them to Mark, who will then feed them back to us, and hopefully we'll get them right and we'll get them on the TV for you to see as well. So kudos to them. And then I want to do a big shout out to Bob Dunbar and Andrew, who produced this show really and keep
Thank
us
you.
all on track.
Thank you.
Yeah. So moving on, Matthew, and I mentioned earlier, and while we're waiting for some numbers to come in, that you guys have been doing a lot of work with the election, but you're doing some other things like the journal articles and there's some other projects you guys got going on. You want to talk a little bit about some of the things you're doing?
Of course. Maybe probably the most visible thing in the city was our march in March for the new high school in front of the city council. It was really something that we had developed over a whole month of working, creating an educational campaign, putting up posters through the school, contacting media such as Revere TV, seeing how we can cover our march. It was really just a full-on effort from everyone in the Student Senate, and we received so much support from the school, from people in and around the city that I just can't be more thankful for. And then moving on, the Student Senate Star is right now a monthly page in the Revere Journal that is completely student produced and student edited. And we really wanted to create this, especially in election year, to promote student engagement and student voice in the city. Other than that, we've worked on school beautification projects such as creating a number of murals within the high school. And also over the summer, we worked on kind of revamping community framework for the high school and moving forward in this year to kind of look at what's wrong with the high school, what do we need to work on, and how are we going to do that.
And who do you need to work on to collaboratively get it all done? Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And I've always said, and one of the things in many conversations I've had is that my every opportunity and every chance or event that I've worked with where I've worked with students from the high school, when I was at the Historic Society or with Beachmont Improvement Committee projects and everything, I mean, it's amazing what a resource we have at the high school amongst these students, and they all really enjoy getting involved. So it's so great to see them, number one, organize themselves and get it to the point that they have.
Right, and
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be at one meeting at the high school. I know Representative Janino was instrumental in bringing in Big Brothers, Big Sister, and actually, Matthew, you were there. I don't think we really got to talk too much, but you know, that's when I first heard about the frameworks you're working with the leadership of the high school, and it was great and you know, it was really wonderfully organized because you had three really wonderful alumni come back and talk about it, and Representative Gina was one of them, and two other people from her class came
Yeah.
back and talked about it. So it was great. And so that's like one of, I'm sure, a bunch of different partnerships that are happening, not only at the high school, but across the city.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because it's one of the conversations I've had with Matthew is this sustainability and inviting people like Jessica, like yourself, to come in and talk to them about how do they keep this thing going, because they're all going off to college next year, some of them, and there will still be others, and how do you keep this thing going after that?
Right.
Getting back to the reason why we're here in the preliminary election, and some of the issues. I mean, we know the candidates now, so and I'm sure people who have been following along with the election are pretty familiar with some of the issues. But I thought it might be worth just kind of running down some of what I see as some of the major ones and look for some input. I mean, we've heard over and over again that public safety seems to be an issue. There are a number of people that think that there's more needed in the police and fire departments, and maybe reorganizations that might need to take place, but they see public safety as an issue that somewhat needs to be addressed, and people have different ideas on how to go about that. Education is the other one. The biggest thing, of course, is the high school, where the new high school will go and what it's going to cost and so forth. That's been talked about all over the place, but also two other issues with the high school that I've seen and heard about from the conversations is again, public safety at the high school. People are concerned about safety for the students there. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that in a second. And then also some of what's being offered in terms of vocational training at the high school versus what's take a place at the Voc, because there are so many people trying to get into the Voc right now, there aren't enough seats to fill those, so they're looking, we should maybe have some more vocational training at the high school. So those are some of the educational issues. And then, of course, there's the development and the growth in the city, and I'll put traffic along with that, because part of that is traffic, amongst other things. I'll throw those out as a start, but anybody want to throw in on that, or?
No, you can go ahead.
Talk about the safety
Well,
issue.
I talk about the safety issue at the high school. Let me try to frame the other stuff that you
Okay.
talked about. Yeah.
Just kind of looking back, obviously there's been a lot of negative media, especially towards the end of last year, over maybe fights at the high school, maybe drug problems and stuff like that. And really what I have to say is that while there is a problem, it's problems that you find and you face all across the country, all across the state. And I really feel like it's been put in such a negative lens, and really the people who have been hurting from it have been the students, have been the teachers who have gone under really criticism that is not really valid, to a point where we have to look at, yes, fighting is an issue, drug use is an issue, but instead of just thinking of consequences for those, we need to think of what is stemming from that. What problem is causing this violence? What problem is leading to this drug use? And I feel like that is not talked enough, especially in the city, where it's a lot of blanket policies, such as the school committee's cell phone policy that went into effect this year, a blanket policy that kind of really is getting some pushback from teachers, students, administrators all across the city. And I feel like this kind of trend of focusing on consequences rather than what issues are stemming from the ground up has led to a lot of these issues.
All right. Well,
I mean,
Any thoughts on
that's
that?
a great segue into, you talked about, a lot of things that we're seeing trending nationally. I think the problem, the controversies or the problems or the disagreements that you see in the city of Revere amongst, whether it's governmental bodies or just people on the street, is not dissimilar from what you're seeing across the country and across the Commonwealth, right? That's not to belittle all of it,
Yeah.
because I think any of us, when we're experiencing it ourselves, it becomes more acute, right? So we're all doing it. And I think, look at, I get really in a very bottom brain place sometimes when I'm sitting in traffic. I don't think there's any of us with a pulse that don't. And I think, we have to think about, the census that's done every 10 years. Revere grew more than any other community across Massachusetts by, I think, 30,000 people. And that's a lot of people to absorb in a small footprint, but we are seeing it in all of the urban areas. And part of that is because they have to have access to, transportation. There are, wherever people lay in the economic, in the economic
Yeah.
stratus, people are not, either you can't afford to buy a car or you don't want to have a car. So, when you look at all the different things, we know that we're hearing about the transportation woes in Massachusetts. We know we're hearing about different things, that are really federal. It's not to pass the buck. It's, how do you put together a plan? And I think what is fortunate is you have policy leaders that represent us in Washington and at the State House who are really kind of looking at the big picture. And it's hard because, I'm angry, or someone's angry when they're in traffic, or something happens right there. But you have to think about, what's the overall fix and what's not the quick fix. And I
Yep.
think it's hard sometimes when you're going through that to take a step back and be like, all right, now how do we solve this? And I think so many things have been kicked down the road that now, whoever is our next mayor, God bless them, because it's I think municipal government is the hardest of it all, because no matter what you do, I call it the tree issue, because if there's a tree in between two houses, one neighbor wants it knocked down, one neighbor wants it kept up, you've immediately upset one whole household. I mean, that's municipal politics in a nutshell. But it's also where the rubber meets the road for everybody in government. And I think it's always been amazing to me that it's the lowest turnout we have, because it's so. This is what I
Yeah.
find really so amazing about all these people in such really hard times across our country, across our Commonwealth, and certainly in our city, that they have stepped up and put their name on the ballot.
Yep.
I mean, that is, that is not easy in a good year. I mean, it's incredibly intimidating. Everybody's an armchair Monday morning quarterback. And I was lucky enough to get elected 8 terms, and it's a lot. And I think we have some results coming in.
We have some numbers coming up. All right.
Okay.
All right, so first off, Ward 1, we have Joanne McKenna is jumping out to a pretty good sizable lead at 73 votes, followed by John Stamatopoulos with 232, and then Brian Aberbach at 69. Kathy, you want to do one Ward 4?
Sure. Ward 4, we have Paul Argenzio at 244 votes. Irby Jean Baptiste at 81 votes, and Gregory Allen Murray at 66 votes. And it looks like we have no results from Ward 5 in yet.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so we got Joanne. It's is jumping out to a sizable lead at this point. And do we know how many precincts?
I was just going to ask, are all the
Yeah.
precincts in? I don't know if we know if all the
Well,
precincts are. I'm not sure.
I think the guys in the booth are trying to figure that out right
Yeah,
now.
so that's what we have so far. I don't know if it means that
that's-
all
yeah.
of Ward 1 and Ward 4 are
Yeah.
in yet, but we'll figure it out.
We'll update you shortly.
Oh, okay,
Oh, wait a
that's
minute.
all of
Oh,
Ward
here we
1.
go.
So all of Ward 1
All
is
right.
in.
So with that being said, then Joanne topped the ticket for the preliminary, and she and John Stamatopoulos will be moving on to the vote in November. In Ward 3, it's also total.
Ward 3 is in, but we don't have a Ward 3 race.
Yeah, that's right. There's no Ward 3 race.
And we don't have all of Ward 4 in yet.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, that's quite all right. And I was immediately going to the ward race, and there were other races that
Yes.
they're voting for in Ward 3 as well. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's my ward, but we don't have a ward council.
Yeah. So, to bring up something that you just talked about earlier is that the breadth of the race and the number of people. I don't know if I've ever seen this many people running for elected office in the city. You probably.
I don't think I think when I was very young, I think, back in the 70s, I think there was a lot of activism, if I recall. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little foggy for me. I was very young then,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
early 80s. But I always, having grown up in politics in the city, for us, these are like the high holidays. So, it's, Election Day and Primly Election Day are like very, very big deals. It should be for everybody, I argue. But, I don't recall in my lifetime it being this active. But it's great. And you've seen a lot of younger people get involved in the races. You've seen a lot of people that I haven't seen in a long time. I mean, anyone who drives down Broadway on a Saturday, it's a long drive because there's hundreds of people out in the street holding signs for different candidates.
Yep.
I mean, I think there wasn't a weekend that I didn't see. I think it was Angela Green Sawaya, like out on the beach. Or, you know what I mean? So, and I know the same thing in Beachmont with the candidates out in Ward 1. So, I mean, it's been incredibly active. It's been great. Yeah.
It's been out doing a lot of sign holding, so I can agree that there's been a lot. I was actually out in the rain with one candidate the other night. It was unbelievable. Get a lot of good horns and all of that stuff. But but it's encouraging, number one, to see the number of people who are putting themselves out there and running for office, because number one, it costs money unless you've got people funding you, and not everybody has that. And number two, it takes a lot of time, and for most people, this is not their day job.
No.
So kudos to everybody who's out there and running for office, and I'm hoping that to see this level of participation will carry on beyond the election, to the point where even candidates who may not make it in November will continue to be involved in the community going forward. Because, and to go back to something we were talking about, and what you were saying about the vote, every year we talk about how many votes are not cast, and there's always the question, well, what do you do? How do you get people incentivized to come out and vote? I mean, some people say we should declare a holiday every time there's an election. Maybe that would help, but any thoughts on that?
I think it's hard, and I think if I knew the exact answer, I'd be a millionaire, right?
Yeah,
Any
yeah.
of us who had the right answer would be a millionaire. And I think it's hard too because everyone's different. So there's some people who they quote unquote get fed up with all the sign holding and people knocking on their doors and calling, but it's like, how are you going to reach a candidate? How are candidates IDing their votes? How, you have to, because then, people are like, well, I didn't see what they're working.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of signs. Like, I argue that signs don't vote. That becomes kind of a contest. It was
Yeah.
never something I did. But again, it's been a while since I've been out. But I think, people do want to see you work. And the only way, especially as a newcomer, that you're going to be introduced to people is if you're going places and introducing yourself to people. And yes, there's functions that people go to, but you really have to be at the neighborhood events.
Yeah. I had a conversation with somebody. Oh, we got some more results. Oh, thank you. All right. Oh, in the mayor race. Okay, here we go. Steve Morabito is at 299, followed by Patrick Keefe at 1370. And, and I'm looking at 1390, Dan Rizzo. So by all...
The Greens are.
Yeah. Dan Rizzo should be up.
A little kerfuffled for a moment.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
no
no
worries.
problem. Okay.
Well, so bottom line is the top two right now are Dan Rizzo at 1390, followed by Patrick Keefe at 1370. And then we have Jerry Visconti at 462 and Stephen Morabito at 299. So the two that would be going on to November, if this were to end right now, would be Patrick and Dan Rizzo.
Could we go back? Oh, that's what I wanted to see, like who's, okay, so do you want to do at large?
Yeah, it's also kind of messed up sorted wise, but I can.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yep.
okay. So, it
So
looks,
looking at Ed
Edward-
Almeida is the one that would not be making November at this
So
point.
far.
Yes.
So far. And looking at the wards, we've already said that Ward 1 has already decided. Ward 4, we have Paula Genzio and Jean-Baptiste.
there's a
moving on
9-vote
to November.
difference there.
Yeah,
Well, I
yeah.
don't know if that's final, though. I don't know
Yeah,
if
no,
we
it's
have
not
the
final, but
vote.
yeah, that's right, at this point.
Yeah, I don't know if all the precincts are in Ward 4,
Right,
but right
yeah.
now, there's a 9-vote difference
so there's-
between Jean-Baptiste and Murray.
And
So-
Murray. And then in Ward 5, we've got, let's see, we have 290, Angela Guarino Sawaya is the top vote there, and John Powers at 215 votes, making a strong bid to be reelected there.
Wow. Is there any way we could go back to the graphic you all put together that shows the different wards, like in what's reported in and
Yeah.
not? This
There
one,
we
yes,
go.
thank you so much.
All right.
So all of Ward 3, all of Ward 1,
And
Yep.
2 of Ward
Half
5.
of Ward 5.
half of Ward 4.
Yeah, we haven't heard from Ward 6 or Ward 2 at this point.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
So that's good to know.
And, okay, so the at-large, go ahead. So we already covered that one. So, but just kind of looking at those numbers, go back to the council at large.
Thank you.
There you go. So we have the top vote is
Is-
1308, Tony
No,
Zambulo.
1395. It's
1395.
Robert Hass
Well,
III.
Robert Hass the third, look at that.
And then Anthony,
Yeah,
then
Zambulo.
Mark,
Yeah, and Mark Silvestri
and
at
Michelle
1290.
Yes.
And Michelle Kelly.
oh,
At
and now
1069.
you switched on us. Okay, let's
Okay.
do it again. Robert Hass, 1430.
Oh.
It's Anthony Zambuto at 1367. Mark Silvestri at 1349. Juan Pablo Jaramillo at 1100.
Okay.
Michelle Kelly at 1069. That's the top 5.
Yep.
And right now, the one who is running in the last place that would be knocked out of right now, if this were final, which it is not, is Wayne Rose at
Yep,
529.
Yep.
So
So
it
we're
would be Almeida.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry,
is
it's
he
Almeida.
still
I
there?
apologize.
Oh,
I
at 359.
apologize.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, and as I said, Ward 1 is already set, Ward 2, 4, and Ward 5, again, Powers and Sawaya are in line to move on if this ends at this point. And we've got one precinct in from Garfield, we're still waiting for 3 more, or from Ward 2, excuse me.
And
Go ahead.
so can we make a point too? I mean, in Ward 5, there's 4 precincts. We have 2 at the Paul Revere School, we have 1 at the Satter House, one at the Point of Pies Yacht Club. I mean, I argue that the Jack Satter House still has a very large turnout.
Turnout should be.
So that's going to be interesting to see what the turnout is, both
Yeah.
at the Satter House and the Pines,
Yeah, so that's
for what the results
voters
of that
there.
race
You're
will
right.
be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, again, that Point of Pines neighborhood is a very active political neighborhood as well. So that'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah. So, interesting. See where we go from there. I have to bring myself back because I know we were talking about some of the issues I think for in this year's election. Oh, we were talking about voter turnout. How do we
Yes.
get the larger voter turnout and in part and parcel to that is to get more community activism, if you will, from people getting involved in community related events. Organizing for improvements within their areas of the community and stuff like that, and having some collaboration more so with the elected officials.
Right.
I think when you get more of the collaboration, then you get more participation with the community, then you get more interest, and that probably leads to more voting.
Right. I think.
Ward 4 results are in.
Oh, Ward 4 is
Okay.
in. Okay.
All right, Ward 4 results. Go
Oh,
ahead,
wow.
Kathy.
Okay, so it's Paul Argenzio, tops the ticket there with 701 votes. And Gregory Allen Murray runs second with 241. So
Right.
they will be facing one another in November.
So those are the two moving on to
Congratulations
November.
to both
So
of you.
Herbie Baptiste had it for a little bit, and then Greg Murray come along and
Wow.
made a sprint toward the end.
Okay, so we have 2 in and we have 4 to go.
Yeah. So go back to that precinct, if you will, thing. Graphic. That thing. So
I'm
Ward
sorry,
6.
3 in.
Yeah. Well, so Ward 6 has yet to report in, but and that would be for affecting the councilor at large and mayoral race. So we haven't seen theirs. And then with the Ward 2, we've got the Hyman Towers, which should probably be a sizable vote. I mean,
Yes.
are all 3 at the Hyman Towers?
Could we look at the mayoral graphic now that Ward 4 is
Yep.
in? Okay.
So we have
You go ahead and
Patrick
answer.
pulling ahead at 1642, while Dan Rizzo comes in at pretty close at 1,594 votes,
Right.
and still we have Stephen Morabito and Jerry Visconti as not moving on.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a seesaw going on with Patrick and Dan at this point, and we'll have to see what comes in at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah, wow, that's
Yeah.
I'd be curious, I mean, we probably won't have them tonight, but, the political nerd in me later will be reading once the election commission does the official results, I'll probably
Oh,
be
we
studying
just got
those.
Yeah.
Oh, did it change again?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And
wow.
now Dan Rizzo is pulled ahead again by. Oh, never mind.
No,
not
wait.
even more.
Wow, it keeps changing,
We
this is
just-
crazy.
They put his number up first.
Wow,
Oh,
okay,
there it goes
3
again.
times it changed.
So yes, we do have Dan Rizzo up at 2,123 votes, while Patrick Heath, changed again. We have Dan Rizzo at 2,224 votes, while
So-
Patrick Heath is at 2,101 votes.
So Dan's ahead by 123 votes, if my math is correct.
So that means
so-
we must have more numbers coming in.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we might want to.
So what precincts did we
Oh,
hear
this
from
is
there?
good to know,
And
too.
whoop, there we go.
Okay,
All right.
so all
who
of Ward
did?
4, all of Ward 3.
Wow.
Who do we hear?
Maybe it was just maybe it was just.
Oh yeah, maybe just some more numbers that hadn't been
Populating.
reported earlier. Okay. So we haven't seen any more precincts reporting, but the numbers certainly are changing.
So maybe we should look at the at-large numbers again? Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And we still have
Bob Ass.
Mr. Almeida being the one not moving forward.
Yep.
And it's still-
Bob Hass still being the top vote getter.
Bob Hass.
Well, there you go.
Tony Zambuto, Mark Silvestri, Juan Pablo Jaramillo, and Michelle Kelly right now are the 5 highest top vote getters right now.
Any change here?
No, because we know we have Ward 1 and Ward 5. So Ward 5 right now, again, is in the lead is Angela Garino Sawire at 290. John Powers at 215.
Still holding on 215 there, so that hasn't changed much.
Yeah, that'll change significantly, I'm sure, just when the Satter House comes in alone.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And we're still at 2101. Patrick and Dan Rizzo, 2224, leading by 123 votes. So,
Wow.
a few more precincts to come in, and is this going to go until midnight? Where are those precincts coming from? Well, it will be an interesting race. I mean, so haven't been in the races before, and you get through the primary or preliminary, whatever you want to call it, and then you move on to November. What happens at that point in a campaign?
I mean, you have to keep the momentum up.
Yep.
And I've never run a municipal race, but just from watching them for my whole life, it's it's really interesting. I mean, in different years, you have someone who will, maybe not finish top of the ticket and then turn around and win the final. I mean, it's no matter, you come out of this, if you're successful to make it to the final, now is where it gets real. It gets even more real. Because now you've got all of these people who still haven't voted, who are still undecided, who are still with someone else, and you still have to keep plugging away. So you really, I mean, here is really where the rubber meets the road, and there's no let up. It just gets colder for you, as it and I mean in the weather sense. Like, so now you're holding
Yes, it
signs,
is.
and it's colder, it's darker, it's raining. Like, this is a much nicer election day than November is. So you've got more of the elements and things like that. But it's like you should, It starts again. It starts again tonight, but it definitely starts again tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Boom! You've got to do it.
Everybody's out there.
Yeah.
And it's funny, you talk, it was a nice day, and when I woke up this morning, like I said, thank God it wasn't like yesterday.
Right. And that would affect the turnout.
It certainly would.
And that's the other thing. So, you have to ID your votes. You have to make sure your voters are voting, or get them an absentee ballot, or get them to vote early. I mean, this city had really struggled, as other communities did, with COVID. COVID was a really tough time for everyone. I guess some positive things that came out of it is early voting, the ability to even have some virtual presence in some hearings, so that more of the public can participate in some of those things.
Yep.
So those are positives that came out of it, that you actually made things more accessible for the community. But it's up to the people in the community to participate. People are making decisions about you every single day, and you really should take the time to make this decision. This is when your voice is.
It's funny, and I was. You were going to say something?
No.
Oh, you want to? Okay. But I was going to say, going back to after the election is over, the continuing, and I had a conversation with somebody who was asking about, joining a group and becoming a member of the board, if you will, and so they haven't joined the group, they want to be, and they said, well, how can I get on the board? And I said, well, what you need to do is to get into the group first, do some work, get known as a contributor and the quality of your work, and then you can offer your name up as a member of the board. And it's the same sort of thing, really, when you think about it.
Right.
And the advice that I would give anybody as a candidate, there are many first-time candidates, some who have a recognition around the city, but some maybe who haven't been involved in various activities within the community. And for those who maybe are amongst that group that don't make it, my recommendation is, don't go away.
Right.
Stay involved. Keep going. Juan Jaramillo, out of high school, ran for school committee, didn't get it, but he kept going, and he ran for, I think it was House of Representatives, state
Steve
representative.
Moravito, right out of college, ran for
there's
city
another
council,
one. Right.
didn't win and kept going, and joined organizations like the Revere Beautification Committee. Dan Rizzo, first time he ran, wasn't successful. He
There
kept
you
running.
go.
Tony Zambuto ran several times and was successful. You know what I mean? You have to, there's so many people that really are dedicated to the city. Sometimes it takes time, and sometimes it's about building that name recognition. You know what I mean? And you
Exactly.
have a lot of people who are on the ballot who have done a lot of things. Like, you know, Pat Keefe first ran because he was involved with sports. I mean, it's the same thing, like you see the Martellis everywhere, Don Martelli and Susan Martelli, everywhere involved with sports. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know Angela Garina Sawaya was involved with things. Like, Joanne McKenna was a teacher. Like, there's, John Kingston was, you know, everywhere, right? Like,
yep.
so, you know, and, you know, Fred Sinella was, you know,
He's
you
another
know,
one.
yeah, decades on the, on,
Yeah.
you know, as an educator. Yes.
Oh, hi, Matthew.
And we're back.
Working out a couple of details in the background, trying to get one of our posters out there to get some numbers. But yeah, and going back to posters and getting the numbers from the polls, and something we talked about earlier, and I think the number that I heard was 1,300 people voted early or did mail-in ballots. Was that the number?
Yeah, I don't know if it's official, obviously, but
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
hearing that it was over 1,300 early voters.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, there's always been an absentee ballot that's always been really active in the city, but having the ability to vote early. This year, I actually voted this morning, but I have taken advantage of the early voting a
Yeah.
ton.
Yeah.
Since it's been made available. I think it's been great. And I know it's a lot more work for the Election Commission. Again, I applaud them, but
Yeah.
it's I think it's a really important service.
It is a great service, and hope, going back to our conversation earlier about how do we get more people to vote, maybe that's one way. You know, as I said, if you make it easier for them to vote, then maybe that would help. This funny story is because I did vote early and with the mail-in ballot, and it's this morning after holding signs out there, I came home and then I said, oh, I got to go out and vote. My wife says, no, you already voted. You know, so force a habit to go out to the polling place. But you know, so it makes it much easier, and hopefully it'll add to the number of people that are voting. Did you get a hold of your people that?
No, not yet.
We're working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're still looking to try and get some other numbers in here from some of the other precincts that are out there. Can we go back to maybe looking at the numbers for the council at large again? And some of the others that we got. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. There are the 5. Well, 5 that, if it were November, would be the top vote getters. Now, again, 10 of them go on. So if you're looking down from there, counting down from that, I'm looking to see 855, 871, Stephen Damiano, 871. Alex Relimi has 888. Anthony Parziali with 855. If anybody happened to see Anthony Parziali's candidate statement, it was probably one of the most active, I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, he's really interesting to watch. And then we have Martelli at 776. So those guys are all kind of bunched into that area, trying to maybe, hopefully, get enough votes to boost up their numbers come November time to try and get into that race. But as it stands at this point, it would be Michelle Kelly, Anthony Zambuto, Juan Jaramillo, Bobby Hass, and Mark Silvestri.
And we've got to call out, you know, Michelle Kelly's the only woman in this race.
Yes, you're right.
So, you know,
And-
kudos to her so
Yeah,
far. For
and-
sure.
and-
Kudos to everybody, but, you
Yeah.
know, have
And
to
that-
point that out as someone who's run for office as a woman in this town for 15
it's
years.
worth saying, you know. And that being said, I think it will be the first time in a while, because since Jessica left, that there will be 2 women if Joanne wins in November on the council.
Well, there could be 3 if Angela Sawaya wins also.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
in
I'm
Ward
so
5.
sorry. Thank you for reminding
So,
me of that,
you
yes.
know, and there hasn't been, I don't even know if there's maybe in the 80s there might have been 3 women at once.
Yeah,
When I think you
Rita
had
Singer would have been there.
Rita Singer, Linda Rosa.
Linda
and,
Rosa was another one.
Oh my gosh, Denise Salemi.
Yeah, you're
You
awesome.
know, trailblazers, all of them.
Yeah.
You know, trailblazers for sure.
I met a woman the other day who knew Linda Rosa. She goes, "Oh, do you know Linda Rosa?" She says, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah, but I mean, you know, again, watching council meetings, I mean, some of them served on the council with my father
Yeah.
back in the day, and, you know, remember watching it as we were eating dinner.
Yeah. And speaking of your father and the whole thing of what's it like, you know, after tonight going into November and so forth, as a family, what was it like for you guys in terms of participating in all of this, and what was election nights like?
So, you know, my brother and I always joke about it because it was definitely just, you know, it's just a way of life for us. So it was really second nature. But, you know, when you get older, you realize, okay, no one else does this. Like, no one had, like, a dinner table like we had. I mean, so grateful to my parents for all of it, right? But, I mean, my father used to always say, your next election starts the minute this one's over.
Yep.
And I think another thing he used to say all the time, and I think about it every day, he used to say, I don't love politics, I love people. And it was something so important, especially for a community like Revere, because, you know, politics, look, it's my sport. I mean, people like football, but I follow politics like people handicap
Yeah.
football. But it's what I do. That's the nerd in me. I'm cool with it. But, you know, you have to like people, and you have to realize that the reason you're here is not for yourself, but to serve others. And by the time people are getting to you, they are exasperated, they're angry. You kind of can't meet them at that point. You've got to see if there's a way you can facilitate and help them. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. So, you know, my advice to any newcomers is just to never forget that. Even the people who are returning, just remind yourself of it, because it really is about you want to give back to this community. It's really important.
Okay. You know, as you were talking in, there was something else that came to my mind, and it went away. Do we have any others? Nope. I guess it. Wow. I hate
So
when that
I
happens.
guess you. Well, I mean, I'll elaborate a little more
Go
if
ahead,
that's okay,
please,
because
please,
I mean,
because
you
it'll
talked.
come back to me.
You know, you talked a little about like, you know, what it was like as a family. I mean, most days were great and some days were hard, because, you know, when you're a young person and you know, your favorite people in the world are your parents, and all of a sudden you have people who are saying mean things about your parents. That's really hard to
Yep.
handle. I think what I realized more when I ran for office myself is how much it didn't bother me as much. It bothered me more when someone was negative toward my dad than it was toward me. But I have to say, like my father never came home angry. He always came home with a smile on his face, and he did it again because he loved the city and he loved the people. And so we just feel very fortunate to have been raised in a house like that. And you know, it was crazy. We always had like 30 random people at the house every day. It was fun, but it was nuts. And my mother was like incredible that she was able to manage that.
Yeah, and you mentioned about being the people person and the smile, and that is the one thing I remember about your
Yeah.
father, because you could never be anywhere near Bill Reinstein without him walking up and shaking your hand and saying, "How you
Right.
doing?" and with that big smile on his face.
Another one I'll give you that he always said is, and I say it all the time, I do not take myself seriously, but I take my job seriously.
Oh, that's
and
great.
so that's something too, like, you know, again, you know, check the ego at the door. Make sure that you take your job seriously, but realize, you know, like, this job is, you're elected to do it to serve people. It's not yours to keep.
Yep.
It's you can return if you continue to do a great job.
Yeah, you know, in going back to, you know, we were talking earlier about, you know, how do you get more people out voting and so forth. But there was one other thing, though, the thought that I was trying to remember earlier when you were talking about what it is to run a city and how, you know, good luck to them, you know, whoever wins this race, and about it being this level the most important. And I remember, I think it was Tip O'Neill's, all politics is local.
100%. I mean, it really is. I mean, and that's the other thing. Like, and I say this, you know, being on the state level, you know, there's people are calling whoever they think will help them. They don't know, oh, that's a city issue or that's a state issue. You know, I mean, I still sometimes get calls, and then I'm lucky that I can refer them to a city councilor, or I can refer them to a state rep or to the senator, and and I'll call them myself to be like, I got this, here it is, because you don't want to leave anyone hanging either. But I mean, it is all local. That is the most accurate thing. And I think, I kind of laughed about saying the mayor, hey, good luck. I mean, but it's being a mayor, in my opinion, and I haven't run for it, and I'm not saying I'm going to, by the way, is, I think, the toughest job in America, because it is literally where the rubber meets the road. And again, we live in a coastal community, we live in an urban community, we live in a diverse community, in every sense of the word, in ways you can't even imagine what diversity means. So I think there's so many wonderful things that come with that, and so many difficult things that come with that. And you know what? No matter what decision anybody makes, someone's going to be unhappy, and you just have to keep going, because it's really about, like, how do you deliver the bread and butter things? How are you making sure essential services are being done? How are you making sure public safety is where it needs to be, DPW is where it needs to be, the school department needs to be where it needs to be? It's a monumental task, again, and I applaud all 4 of the gentlemen who put their name on the ballot. It's not easy.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to talk was, we were talking about, how do you get more people out and voting, and one of the things that I've always said, that the toughest thing with the current situation and where we are, I mean, we're a very diverse city, but yet there's a number of the new residents that don't feel maybe invested or maybe not comfortable with coming out and voting, and how do you go about changing that?
Well, I don't even think it's newer residents. I think it's the residents who've always been here. I mean,
Okay,
we've always
as
had,
well.
if you look at how many people have registered versus how many people come and vote, that's not just new residents.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
just people not being involved. So, like, here's the real thing about politics. People usually get involved when they're angry about something. And it's a lot of times how people run, and especially women run. Women run because they were involved in an issue, and they're usually asked 7 to 8 times before they finally say yes. So, I mean, versus, a male person putting his name on a ballot. I mean, those are statistics, right?
Yeah.
So I think, yes, Ed, you're right. I think there are people who, there are people who feel marginalized. But, that may not just be new citizens to this community. It could be people who've been here their whole lives. People don't feel, because everything, anything that's reported is the extremes, because that's what sells TV ads or newspapers. And, really, most people are in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
But people get really stressed out and aggravated at the extremes, and so they're disenfranchised.
All right, so
Okay.
what do we got here?
All of Ward 2 is in.
All of Ward 2 is in now at this point, so where do we, let's see, how's that change the numbers here at this point when we look at the numbers we still have?
Bob Hass is still in the lead.
1683, 1618 for Mark Silvestri, 1622 for Tony Zambito, so those are the top 3. 1358 and 1275 for Kelly, so those are the top 5 there.
And under Kelly is Alexander Ralhimi,
Malini,
Stephen Damiano, Anthony Parziali,
And
Don Martelli, Wayne Rose, and Edward Almeida.
Yep, and Ned Almeida's on the outside still at this point, about a little less than 200 votes beyond who would be next to him, Wayne Rose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And the mayor's race. All right, what are we looking at? Patrick Keith, 2216, Dan Rizzo, 2291. I think those numbers are pretty much where we last saw them.
They've changed a little bit.
Yeah, a little
because
bit.
of Ward 2 coming in.
Yeah.
And then Jerry Visconti at 775 and Steve Morbido at 523.
Yep.
So, I mean, it looks right now, I mean, there's a generous lead with Rizzo and Patrick versus, I'm sorry, with Rizzo and Keith versus Visconti and Morbido. So, I mean, there's still things coming in, but that's what it looks like as of right now. So, wow, interesting.
So let's go back to those precincts. So is it just Ward 6 that we're still waiting for?
And, some Ward 5.
And part of Ward 5.
And part of Ward 5.
There's always so much intrigue. Always waiting for. I feel like we're always waiting for word 6 at the end. Always. And then, I mean, even word 5 again. It's like the Pointed Pines Yacht Club and the Souter House. I mean, those are like we know that the Souter House always has a high turnout.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Oh, we have a note coming in.
She doesn't want to be on.
All right. We're only missing Counselor at Large.
I
All right.
can't.
Got to make a phone call to one of the
Missy?
pollsters. You want to go outside and do that, or is that easier for you? Or?
No, I'll just.
All right, while we're still trying to get those final numbers in.
I'm gonna look at my phone to see if anyone by chance texted me any of them. But yeah, you're right, Ed. I mean, it's like, you both are very civically engaged too. I mean,
Yep.
you grew up with your grandfather and your parents being very
Yes.
civic engaged. That's how I was too.
Yep.
I think, you've seen a lot of civic engagement from the high school, the kids at the high school and, a little older, which I think is wonderful because they always kind of give the younger people a bad rap that they don't vote. I mean, there's a significance. I feel like this generation is very, very, very engaged. And I think that that's so important.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's exciting. How do you feel about that?
I mean, historically, at least in the last 50 years, the 18 to 24 kind of age group has been the least politically involved, the least likely to vote. And it has, in the last 10 years, kind of seen an upturn, but it's still not at the levels such as the older groups, such as 54 to 65 and 65 plus. And what that can really be attributed to is that a lot of times it's not just apathy of younger people, it's not just laziness. It really feels like a lot of times that young people do not see how government impacts their life every day compared to people who are on Social Security or that they own property and that property tax is something that they're thinking about every day. And so it's this kind of sense of how does government impact me and why should I vote? And it's something that we need to kind of show younger people, and we need to show that yes, government impacts you. You're in school, maybe you're a senior who's 18. You don't like that the school doesn't have a lot of options for lunch. That is something that government is kind of impacting you on. You get into college, you're paying $50,000, $60,000 a year. That is a way that government and regulations on tuition prices affects you. We need to teach and show these kids how government affects them and why they should care, I really think.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, well, the other part to that is, and you hit on a word, civics. There was a book, and it is an actor, and the guy that was in Jaws. Why I can't remember his name. Short
Richard
guy.
Dreyfuss.
Huh?
Richard
Yes,
Dreyfuss?
Richard Dreyfuss.
We're
Did you
playing
see his book on?
$20,000 pyramid now, yeah.
Did you see his book on civics?
No.
Well, he's written a book decrying the fact that civics plays a very small part in the education of young people.
Well,
Go ahead.
there was a bill passed, I know in the House, I don't know if it made it final, it may have, that civics should be a priority in schools. That was passed, I believe, last session. I want to say it was passed as a
And
law.
that's why I brought it up, because
Yeah.
I did hear that it's coming back, and I'm going hallelujah.
Yes.
Because, it's interesting, and like you said, there are issues that get people out to vote, like you said, their taxes and the whatever. But, the whole thing about civics, and to some extent, is teaching you the moral obligation as well as the financial or whatever incentive for wanting to get out there and do that. I mean, for lack of a better word, it is the right thing to do, to get out there, get involved in the community, help your neighbors, and have a say in things.
When I would go to classes with younger kids, I would always say, oh, we have another warden.
Yep.
Jack Satterhouse is in.
Yep. So,
Okay.
what do we got there? Let's see, Dan Rizzo, 2430, Patrick, 2302. Jerry Visconti, 825, and what happened on this one? Let's see, Bobby Haas,
Mark Silvestri.
773, Tony Dambudu, 48.
It seems
Silvestri.
Mark
Relieving.
Silvestri has taken the lead in the at-large race, followed by
No, Bob,
Oh, actually,
Bob
Bob
Hass.
Hass is-
Yeah,
Yeah, he's still there, but
but close.
Silvestri, yeah.
So it's Hass, Silvestri, Zambuto, Jaramillo, and Kelly, and Alex Ralhimi is at 10:14. Anthony Parziali is at 9:93. Stephen Damiano at 9:71. Donnie Martelli at 8:46. And Wayne Rose at 6:65. And Edward Almina at 4:64. Wow.
So it's interesting, looking at Alexander Ralimi, first time in there. I think he's well known in the Moroccan community. I've done some work with Alex before, but that's a great showing for him, first time out of the box.
Well, I think he's run for something before.
Has he, within Revere?
He ran for a county office, I believe. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I am apologizing to him right now that I don't remember what
Okay.
it was. I don't know if it maybe sheriff or he ran for something.
Okay.
But he's someone who's stayed active. He ran, like we were talking about, all these people have put their name out there, and you hope that some of these people will continue to do that, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, he's one person I remember. I was doing a show for Revere TV on Ramadan, and he was somebody I reached out to and was able to get me some people to come in and talk about Ramadan.
Right, yeah.
So
No,
it was
it's
great.
It really is.
Yeah. So we're just waiting on Ward 6
Well,
And,
and
one
Ward 5.
precinct.
and
The
one
Point Pines
precinct.
Yacht Club.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 5 isn't official yet
Yep.
either. Do
We're
we
still
have the
there.
graphic for Ward 5 to look at that again? Okay, so Angela Garino Sawaya at 4:12, John Powers at 3:13, Ralph Balan Celestin at 1:38, and Randall
Modestin.
Mondestin. I think I said it
Yeah.
wrong earlier, at 93. So right now it looks like it's Angela Garino Sawaya and John Powers, but we're still waiting for that one precinct to come in.
Yeah. So there's only about 100 votes separating those two, so it moves on. And can you go back to that ward again? All right. So then, you've got roughly 220 votes or so between the other two candidates, if it ends the way it is, for Powers and Sawaya to be going after in November, plus whoever else may
Right.
come up for that race.
Right, so it's like what we were talking about,
Yeah.
now you have people that have shown up and voted in a preliminary election, which, less people show up in a preliminary, oh my gosh, wow, than a final. So they're likely, quote unquote, up for grabs, plus you'll have more people coming in. So, there's no guarantee where those people go, and one person never gets all of them. So,
Yeah.
it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over
Yeah.
in Ward 5. I mean, same thing in Ward 1 and Ward 4, and Ward 2, I think it has a
Yeah,
race as
yeah,
well
yeah.
in November.
69, although John has quite a bit of ground to make up if he's going to want to challenge Joanne in November.
And
Brian's-
actually, and Paul Argenzio has a very solid,
yeah,
he
he's
got a very solid vote.
lead there as
Yeah.
well. Yep.
yeah, so, I mean,
Yeah.
again, you've really seen everyone out. I mean, my phone, like I show, like a lot of other people, has been off the hook with people calling us and people knocking on the doors and getting things in the mail or left in the door. So people have been working. They
Yeah.
really have been. Yeah, it's been good. Interesting. Oh my goodness.
So what do we talk about next?
Well, you guys talk. I've talked too much, and now I'm doing
yeah.
tongue twisters.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna have a sip of water, to be honest with
Yeah.
you.
Well, go back to the civics thing, or
I was
something
going to
you want to
just
bring up.
touch on, especially in Massachusetts and very much in Revere, civics has taken a role a major role in education. I know that all 8th grade social studies is a full civics course. In 10th grade, you have to complete a civics action project where you can do it as a class, you can do it as a person. Pretty much what the whole point of it is to find a problem that is important to you and create steps and plan on how to get that done. So that could be emailing representatives, it could be talking to a city councilor, it could be organizing a community cleanup. For what I did for my AP US history class is that we took up the issue of youth voting and lowering the age of voting to 16 in local elections, specifically school committee. And we found that this has been a large push in the state from different cities and different towns. And we emailed representatives that have introduced bills. We've emailed our representatives, and we were lucky enough before the end of the year to get on a Zoom call with Representative Turco and Representative Janino to talk about it and what steps moving forward could we take. And I think it's really something that allows kids who maybe have never had a touch in a political sphere to really get involved and be active and kind of have fun with something in a political sphere.
I love that that's happening.
Yeah, and that being said, and as I was talking about collaboration and involvement to still stem that interest, it would seem to me that it would be a boost, a benefit to every counselor to have one or two interns from the high school working with them, helping with communication. So communication is as I've pointed out before, for me, is probably one of the most difficult thing for any elected representative to continually and effectively do, communicating with their constituents and in a frequent, if you will, manner, and having that resource, because there's never enough time to put together
Right.
the emails, the blurbs, the whatever,
Right. And it's really important as an elected official sometimes to open yourself up to hard conversations. And that's hard because, anyone who is lucky enough to get elected and serve comes from a really genuine place, I believe. And it's sometimes really hard because, sometimes you forget too that those elected officials are also human and they're going through their own things. And yes, this is their job, but you want to approach someone with the same grace that you want given to yourself. And that goes vice versa for the elected official when they're talking to someone and they may not understand the predicament or the concerns that they have.
Okay, apparently. All right. So I think the latest news is we're going to City Hall to get the Ward 6. Apparently our communication with the pollsters at Ward 6, I guess, is not working.
Yes.
So we're working on another avenue.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, take me back because that just took my mind away from it, where we were just...
We were just, I think, talking about like the importance of approaching people with the same grace and
Yes.
respect that you deserve with others. And I think, in public discourse in general, that's missing on every level. So I think that's what makes it even harder, I think, to be in elected office and to put yourself out there to be in elected office. And that's the hardest part for families as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's really hard when there's something you care about and you don't feel like you're being heard. Like you said, Matthew, though, that's what voting is for, and that's why if you don't, these are the opportunities that you can be heard, and you need to show up, and you want elected officials to know who you are.
Yep.
And it doesn't mean that you show up and you're in their face. You just, even if it's pleasant experiences, because you want to be able to have that access, and you just, this is your community.
Yep.
So again, it could be the pothole. It could be a broken sidewalk. It can be you need a street sign, or you need a no parking sign, or someone needs a handicap sign, or, anything, like your dog is lost. There's so many, your car got broken into. There's so many different things. And again, especially the tough stuff, you come and you're upset. We've all been there. I've been there too. But you're just going to try to somehow be like, okay, can I have this grace? But sometimes, if you don't feel that you get it from the other person, that's when sometimes people say, okay, I'm doing this now, because I don't think anyone's hearing me. Mm-hmm. So, there are both of those sides. But I think if there's a way, again, we grew up in it, you grew up in it, we all grew up in the importance of being civic-minded and being involved civically.
Yep.
And I think one thing is that you're seeing, even though there's such a divide, is you have people that are paying attention. But it's incumbent upon all of us, too, to do our own due diligence and research to see what is true and what is not true. So, there's a lot of different factors at play now, because you have 24-hour news cycles, you have the internet that sometimes doesn't tell the truth and sometimes does. So it's a lot of work on a person as an individual. So I have friends who are like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't think it can be heard. I think we need to change the form of government. I mean, I appreciate that, but it's been the same two-party system since Thomas Jefferson. So we have to play the game we're given. And what you do is you try to get yourself involved and try to affect change so that it's positive for more groups of people. That's my opinion.
Yep.
Other people don't feel the same way, and that's why they should be involved if they have a difference of opinion than me. That's the beauty of this country.
Well, and of course, like you said, it is, getting involved.
Right. And it's a lot of work, because the other thing is like, we're used to, we can, go to the McDonald's drive-through, or we can have DoorDash deliver something to our door.
Yeah.
Like, change is slow. Changing policy, changing ideas, changing minds, changing vision is not instant gratification. So you have to stick with it. And I think that's really hard for people, because you can get anything with this. So,
And we just got
And
Okay.
it looks like we got one precinct in from Ward 6 is reporting.
excellent.
that would be for at large.
Okay. Go ahead and read them.
Nothing much has updated yet. Should wait for maybe like a couple seconds. Oh,
Let's see.
there we go.
Yes,
We still have
2019.
Bob Hass at 2,019 votes at the top
Top
spot.
vote getter.
Then we have Tony Zambuto at
Right underneath.
1959, and then next
Close.
up we have
Is it Silvestri?
yeah,
at
Mark Silvestri
1952?
down by 7 votes.
Yep.
Yes.
And then
Nice.
you got
Michelle Kelly.
Pablo Jaramillo at
Oh,
1555.
And Michelle Kelly at 1609.
Michelle
so
at 1609.
so
Right.
she- and after that
For that, it
is
is
Alexander Olimi at 1,151. And then we have
Anthony Parziale.
And we were talking about Alexander Ralimi making a strong showing, and Stephen Damiano is making a strong showing towards the end of this. So it's,
So
as
is
the
Anthony Parziale.
other
All of them
precincts,
are,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at,
Oh, 1107, you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
So there's,
and Don Martelli's not far behind that. Yeah.
oh.
Wow. Wow.
So there again, going back to that, starting tomorrow, you take a look at those numbers, say, okay, we need to expand our reach.
Well, especially too, if, there's, again, it's so fluid, because people can vote for up to 5, doesn't mean they
Yeah.
do.
Yes.
So, I mean,
True.
you don't have
Yep.
to vote for 5. So again,
Little bullet.
it's great when you make it, I mean, with the exception of one person, everyone is still, this is not over. So, again, there's anything could change. Anything could change.
Wow.
So, yeah, really interesting. Wow.
So let's go back to those precincts again. So what are we still waiting on here at this point?
we're waiting on a new Point of Pines Yacht Club.
There we go.
And then Precinct 1 and Precinct 3 of Ward 6.
Yeah.
Ward 6.
So you've got 3 left, and then we'll be off of the television. You guys don't have to see us anymore.
At least till
Until
November.
November.
Well, it's given us a chance to have, really talk about a broad range of subjects, and,
Yeah.
and probably some that don't get talked about enough. So I think I enjoy, doing these coverages so that we can maybe have some conversations about some of these things, and maybe be able to have some more going forward. All right, so we got
We've got another one of Ward
Point of
6.
Pines still isn't in yet, but we've got another one in from Ward 6.
We have Precinct 2 and Precinct 3 in.
Let's see
Okay.
how that. Ooh.
All right. Bobby Hass, 2132.
Sam Buddha at 2079, then Mark Silvestri at 2048, and then we have Michelle Kelly at 1716, and then Juan Pablo Jaramillo at 1611, and that's our top 5 for right now.
There you go.
And then moving on, we have back to
Okay.
the ward races.
All right,
So-
Ward 1, Ward 4 we know, and looking at Ward 5,
We're still waiting on Point Pines Yacht.
yep, still waiting on that, so those are still the same.
But that's, that's with the Satter House in, and so you still have Angela leading John Powers by almost 100, 99 votes, right?
Yes.
I'm not a math major, but I believe that's 99 votes. Yeah, wow, that's very interesting. Again, a lot of people, I believe, putting their name on the ballot for the first time over there. So,
Yeah.
a
so
very active community.
Yeah.
Like, Point of Pines
Point
in
of
that
Pines
area.
is very
Yeah.
active, yeah.
Yeah.
It's, well, Ward 2, we haven't seen much. I mean, that would be probably another one that will become active in November. I mean, of course, they weren't part of this preliminary, but yeah, there's a number of active pockets within the city. Beachmont being another one. I mean,
Beachmont
that's
has always been politically active.
Yeah.
I mean, that was always that was just always one of the biggest ones. And I think Ward 6 probably has just a huge voter turnout. We know that, Ward 2, back, 40, 50 years ago, used to be a very large turnout, and it hasn't been in the last couple of decades. But again, with neighborhoods changing, like, I don't know, I didn't look at how many registered voters were out of there, but
Yeah.
you never know, and again, it's not only about who's registered to vote, it's what the percentage of people come out who are registered to vote. I believe last time it was a very low turnout.
That's a very good point. It's because you're right, there is a large number of registered voters, but are they coming out to vote?
Yeah, because, there's what they call super voters, which are someone who vote in every election,
Yeah.
which I argue would probably be the three of us, right? And then you have some people who only vote in presidential election years. You have some that only vote when the governor's up. So then you have those off times, which is just your municipal.
Yeah.
And again, this is where I can't say it enough, it's where the rubber meets the road. It's
Yeah.
it's why you're happy or upset about government is usually when you walk out your door.
So in going back to what you were saying earlier, and I guess looking in, all right, so we've got all of Ward 6 is in. All right, and just the Point of Pines we haven't heard from. Yacht Club.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Switching around.
can we go back to the mayor one?
Yeah.
So what do we got here? Rizzo, 2430, 2302, so it's still
hasn't
100 and
updated
some
yet.
odd votes.
Yeah, so you have, right now, Dan Rizzo is in the lead under Patrick Keefe, and
Yeah.
then you have Jerry Visconti and Steve Morbido. So
Yeah.
it looks right now, unofficially, this is all unofficial, that with one precinct left reporting, it looks as if it will be Dan Rizzo and Pat Keefe in the final in November.
And going back to the councilor at large, 2409 again is Robert Hass is still the top vote getter there, followed by 2362, Tony Zambuto would it be?
Yeah,
In second.
Mark Silvestri is
Mark
third.
Silvestri is third at 2275,
Michelle Kelly is fourth.
fourth at 1916,
And Juan Pablo,
and one Pablo Jaramillo at 1727, and right, everybody else is 5 to or more hundred below that.
right?
Well, Paziali is pretty close there. Paziali, excuse me, has 1313 to Juan Pablo's 1727. So he's,
So does,
So does
Romney.
Alexander Rahimi has 1330.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
again,
yeah. So they're,
strong showings for Stephen
Yeah,
Damiano, strong showing for Anthony Parziali, strong showing for Don Martelli.
yeah, those are big.
Yeah,
So
really.
this is, going back to the conversation we were having earlier about, all these first-time candidates, and it just shows that, hey, you can do it.
Right.
Or you can come pretty damn close.
And if you're not successful now or in November, like, keep showing up for the city. Just keep showing up.
So we're just waiting for the Point of Pines, I think, at this point.
That's
And
And it's still not in.
yeah, and it's still not there.
And no.
Yeah. So I'll ask one other question. Talking about campaigns, and you were talking about the numbers, trying to keep track of who's voted, the super voters, et cetera, et cetera. And it always amazes me the science of managing a campaign. And now, did you have a campaign manager when you were running, or what
I did not.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. I had a lot of elections that I was unopposed, so I was really lucky. But I've worked on a lot of
Yep.
campaigns. So, now you have, I sound like I'm 800 years old, that I like walked to school uphill both ways and killed a bear with my notebook on the way to school.
And we liked it.
And we liked it. But when I started running in the late 90s, the technology wasn't there. I mean, we weren't attached to our cell phones.
Yeah.
Now, like, there's different applications that you can use that everything's computerized and voter ID'd. And my mom used to always tell a story about when my father first ran to come back for state rep in the 80s. I mean, it was all done on legal pads.
Oh.
And everything was hand done. And I
Like the
remember
old
my mom
spreadsheet,
saying,
the ledger board.
they had just tons of legal pads. Everything was run out of the house. We had 4 lines installed, and we were doing all the calls downstairs in the house. It was like really something to watch. And I remember my dad won that race, I think by 250 votes. And my mother said, and we knew who they were. Because it was about the IDs. And, anyone who does this, 1 is someone who's definitely with you, 2 is leaning you, 3 is undecided, 4 is leaning somewhere else, 5 is not with you. So it's like, you do try, that's why these people are calling you to try to ID it. And, again, I always say, if you have the ability to vote early, you're better off, because then you can be taken off some of those lists, probably to come out and vote. Because, I've done calls not only for myself and my father, but for people not only in this community, but all over the state, of like helping to get out the vote for
Yep.
people. So, again, and those voter lists is kind of what determines sometimes now how you do mailings and things like that. It used to all be, 15 people at a table stuffing it yourself. Like, that's still the way a lot of it. Some people still do that. I used to do that, but a lot of times it doesn't, and that's why money is a factor. You've got to raise some money to get this done, to be able to reach the people that you need to reach
Yeah.
in the way that you can reach them now, because it's really hard. Like, there's no, there's a lot of people don't have, hardwired phones. So like, even IDing your vote, things like that are more difficult to do. Yeah, there's such a science to it. It's amazing.
Yeah, what little I know about it, and that's how I was curious.
But you don't want to take away or ever scare someone for just putting their name on the ballot. And nothing will ever beat retail politics and that one-on-one and that door-to-door. I was talking to a friend of mine in another community today, and they have a primary too, and she said, and I'm voting for so-and-so. I don't know them, but I saw them out every single day. So again, we talked about this before. It's about, like, are you showing up? Are you showing up at things? Like, are you approachable? That's not substantive, but it still matters.
Yeah.
You hear about having a beer with someone. There's more to all of it than that,
Yeah.
but that connection is important for people. You want to feel like you connect with someone.
Yeah, and that it goes back to the whole thing about getting out there, get visible, participate in things, get people to know who you are. Anthony Parziale is showing that. He's been ubiquitous, everywhere throughout this campaign. His
Right.
face is popping up, and
Same thing with Mr. Damiano. I met him in a few things too, and I saw him this morning holding signs on Sargent Street. He's out all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is not for the weary, but it's. I don't think there's anything more intimidating the first time you walk into a function, and people are like, who? What? What's your name? And you're just like, okay, I could run back out into my car and go home and never do this again. It's like, and I grew up in it, and it's scary.
Yeah.
It's intimidating, and again, you really lean on not only your family and your friends, but your supporters, and there is such a really rush and a drive. There's something, this city, there's something so special about politics. It's definitely one of the main sports in the city.
For sure.
Always has been. Always has been. And a contact one at that sometimes, yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So we still waiting on the Point of Pines folks?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Interesting.
Go to commercial.
Oh my gosh.
Well, how about them?
1.
Hello and welcome back. I told you we might be here till midnight. The dog sled coming in from the Point of Pines is just, it's got caught up in traffic by Kelly's. I think there was some roast beef chips out there that he was probably eating, so we're still waiting on those numbers at this point. We're going to go on till about 9:30, and if we still don't have the results in, we're going to try and unofficially call the race as we see it with the numbers that are in, knowing that Ward 5 will be added in at some point. And that official result will then come from the election office.
And
But-
5-1 is the only one, so we do have part
Ward
5.
5, Precinct 1, right, is the only one. That's the Point of Pines, I think.
So
on-
basically,
Yeah.
anyone,
Yeah,
if they
club.
want to check the official results after they're certified by the Election Commission, they can go on revere.org and go to elections.
Right,
Okay.
and they should be there by tomorrow morning. Or hopefully before.
Yes.
They'll be working till
Yeah.
midnight probably.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
again,
yeah.
Thank you for all
we
you
were
do.
talking about the difficult job.
you for all you do.
And doing that, we have no idea, but anything can happen at this point. So there's obviously a delay in getting those numbers. So we'll try and get them as soon as possible.
So can we maybe
Yeah, go
start
back
running
and look at
down
the
from
other
the
ones that are
mayor,
there.
right? So, or
Yeah.
do the, however we want to do it.
Yep. So as it stands right now, as we said before, Dan Rizzo, Patrick Keefe would be the two moving on. Don't know how many votes would be coming in from Ward 5, Precinct 1, but probably not enough to
To change.
change
it.
that. So we could look, and then it does look like it would be Patrick Keefe and Dan Rizzo going head-to-head for November.
Okay.
And whichever one of them is the top vote getter, well, then that would be determined by those final votes coming in. Looking at the at-large race, here again, Robert Hass by 2409.
Anthony.
Tony Zambuto, 2363 is the second. 2270, well, I'm sorry, Mark Silvestri, 2275 is third.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Michelle Kelly is 4th.
Michelle Kelly is fourth. And is Juan Pablo still fifth? Okay.
Yes.
And then you've got Don Martelli at 1100, Tony Parziali at 13, Alec Rahimi at 1300, and Steve
Steve-
Damiano at 12. So you've got those guys all bunched up.
And then Wayne Rose will be the,
And-
as of right now, Wayne Rose, and so the one person
no.
not moving on.
No, Ned Almeida. He's still at 545.
Right,
so it looks-
that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Wayne Rose is the
Oh.
last one to make it in. and
Yes. Oh, yeah.
The one who will
Okay.
not be making, as of right now, as it
Right.
looks, is Edward Almeida will
Yeah.
not be
And
moving forward.
he's got quite a bit to make up in that one precinct, so chances are he will be the one to drop off the ballot for November at this point. So there you have it, and that's what it looks like your at-large slate will be for November.
And then I guess, thank you.
And then we've got Ward 1, we've known that one for a while. Ward 4, again, we've known that one as well, so it's going to be in Ward 1, Joanne McKenna and John Stamatopoulos. Ward 4, it's going to be Paul Argenzio and,
It's going to be, wait a minute, I have it
Argentio
here.
and Murray.
And Greg Murray.
and Greg Murray, right. I was just wondering if there was another number coming up that might change it. Okay, so Paul Argenzio and Greg Murray. And then in Ward 5, we have Angela Sawaya and John Powers moving on to November. And again, even though there's one precinct there, chances are there won't be that many votes that are going to make that much of a change there, I don't think. But
So we have about 15 seconds left to
Yep.
9:30, so.
Yep. So, and that would be what it looks like going into
Yes.
November. So, listen, thank you all for hanging in there with us for tonight. I want to say that, Kathy, it's been a real pleasure. I hope I didn't tire you out with all the questions, and I really appreciate the breadth of your knowledge and behind the elections, your experiences and so forth. It just kind of helps put some great perspectives on what this is all about.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. I appreciate you always doing this and your dedication to the city. And Matthew, it's so nice to have you here, and to see someone who's so engaged with the high school involved in this. So thank you for all of your points and your we've appreciated it. It's been great.
Yeah, and I think it's just lovely to see kind of an upward trend in student engagement in the city, and I just hope that this is just a starting point, especially with just Student Senate and Revere TV collaborating and allowing student voice to flourish in more ways than just a march, more ways than just a letter to the editor, and allowing students to really take advantage of all the resources that the city has.
Yeah. Your future in Revere, not just Matthew, but the students that he represents and works with on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's amazing. They give me a lot of hope for the future of the city. They really do, and thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing more activity from them.
Thank you, Revere TV.
Yes,
thank you, everybody,
and
for
thank
watching.
you for Revere TV, all the people out at polls, and Mark Ferranti. I know what it's like being out there, Mark. Well, not that I've been out there, but you've told me many times. And everybody here on the staff at Revere TV, thank you all, and thank you all for watching. Until November, take care.